The factory was dark, cold, and humming with distant mechanical life. A low haze hovered near the floor from the exhaust of lifeless machines, their motors dead for the night but never truly still. Shadows clung to the corners like old memories, unwanted and thick. The Play Pals Corporation's towering assembly warehouse, the birthplace of the good guy doll, stood like a hollow graveyard of plastic smiles and cheerful voices. Inside, a group of executives loomed over the disassembled pieces of a now infamous product, the good guy doll once known as Chucky. Technicians in white coats moved quietly around the doll's shattered remnants, avoiding eye contact with the thing's lifeless plastic eyes, which had been pried from its cracked skull. The executives watched, more concerned with public relations than with the body count Chucky had left in his wake. "This has to work," muttered Mr. Sullivan, head of Play Pals, pacing nervously behind the workers. "We can't afford more lawsuits. No one believes that doll was actually alive. We'll rebuild it. Repackage it. Get ahead of the narrative. Control the damage." "What about the rumors?" "The Barkley kid," one of his assistants whispered. "Andy Barkley is a traumatized little boy. That's the story we go with. His mother's locked up in a psych ward for buying into his fantasies. No one's going to believe a killer possessed a doll, unless we let them." As sparks flew and the technicians began replacing the doll's melted plastic limbs with fresh ones, a surge of static jumped across the room. Tools jerked in hands. The lights flickered. Somewhere deep inside the factory's outdated circuitry, something old, something evil, was awakening. They didn't see it. Not at first. But when the technician lifted the doll's refurbished head and attached it to the fresh body, the eyes snapped open. And they moved. Not in the normal, mechanical way. They rolled back into the doll's skull. Then forward again, locking onto the nearest human being with a flicker of human rage behind them. "Power surge," one technician said nervously, flicking off the breaker. "Something's wrong with the wiring." "Just get it finished," Sullivan barked. "We're not paying you to get spooked." But he should have been. Because in that moment, deep within the plastic skull of the doll, something unholy stirred. Something that had been waiting. Watching. Charles Lee Ray, the Lakeshore Strangler, had returned. The resurrection wasn't complete yet, but the soul had found its shell. It just needed a trigger. And he already knew who that would be. Meanwhile, miles away in the city, Andy Barkley sat on the edge of a new, unfamiliar bed, staring at the neatly folded pajamas left for him by Joanne Simpson, his new foster mother. The room smelled like lemon cleaner and dried lavender. It had posters of baseball players and toy soldiers that Andy didn't recognize. He missed his old room, the one with the familiar window that looked out at the city lights. But more than that, he missed his mom. "She's not crazy," he whispered to himself, hugging his knees. "She believed me. She saw what Chucky did." The foster home was quiet. Too quiet. Phil Simpson, his foster father, was strict but fair. Joanne was softer, kinder. But they both looked at him the same way sometimes, like a bomb that might go off. Like a kid who had seen something no kid should ever see. They didn't believe him either. Not really. He hadn't told them the whole truth. Not about the way Chucky screamed as he burned in the fireplace, or how his blackened hand clawed its way out of the ashes. Not about how his eyes gleamed, not with plastic joy, but with hate. That wasn't something you just told people. They'd lock you up too. Andy swallowed hard and looked toward the closet door. It creaked slightly in the wind. Just a door. Just the wind. Still, he got up and slammed it shut. Then he pushed the dresser in front of it. Back at the Play Pals factory. Night had deepened, and the technicians had gone home. But something remained in the factory. The doll was gone from the table. Security footage would later show static. Then movement. Then blood. But tonight, no one knew. Chucky was alive again. Inside a storm drain across the street, he sat propped against a wall, his eyes blinking in the darkness. His limbs twitched, adjusting to their renewed form. He looked down at his plastic fingers, then grinned. Still got it, he chuckled. You can't keep a good guy down. The laugh was raspy, human. And hungry. He stood, shakily at first, then confidently. The city lights shimmered above him like 1,000 new victims. But he had one goal. One boy. One soul to claim. Andy, Chucky said, his voice filled with venom. I'm coming home, kid. The next morning, at the Simpson residence. Breakfast was silent. Joanne had made pancakes, but Andy barely touched them. You okay, sweetie? She asked. Andy nodded. You sure? He nodded again, more slowly. Joanne looked at Phil. Phil didn't say anything. That afternoon, Joanne took Andy to the school bus, and waved as it disappeared down the block. As she walked back into the house, she never noticed the small, red-haired figure watching from the alley across the street. Blue overalls. Striped shirt. Bright red shoes. Or the knife tucked behind his back. At the school. Andy was trying. Trying to be normal. Trying to pay attention. But he could feel something pressing at the edges of his mind, like he was being watched. Every time he turned around, nothing was there. Until recess. That's when he saw it. At the edge of the playground, behind the chain-link fence, just standing there in broad daylight, was Chucky. Unmoving. Silent. But his head was tilted, and his eyes never left Andy. Andy screamed. Teachers came running. Kids stared. But when the teacher looked where Andy pointed, there was nothing there. No doll. No Chucky. Just empty street and wind. That night. Andy didn't sleep. He lay under the covers, flashlight gripped in one hand, a kitchen knife hidden beneath his pillow. The closet was barricaded. The window locked. But his heartbeat thudded like a drum in his ears. Then, he heard it. A sound from downstairs. The front door opening. Slowly. Creaking. Then, the soft patter of little feet across hardwood floors. Andy bolted upright. He grabbed the knife. Creeped to his door. Listened. Then a voice echoed up the stairwell. You wanna play, Andy? The voice was not playful. It was mocking. Sinister. Sadistic. Andy backed away from the door, trembling. He didn't know how Chucky had gotten in, but he knew the doll never stopped. Never gave up. He'd killed before. He'd kill again. And he was in the house. Downstairs. Phil Simpson yawned as he stepped out of the den, rubbing his neck. He thought he'd heard something. Maybe Joanne. Maybe Andy. He turned toward the kitchen. The lights were off. Then, something small rushed toward him. Something fast. Before he could react, a knife slashed upward, slicing deep into his calf. Phil screamed and hit the ground hard. The knife arced again, this time toward his throat. Chucky leapt onto his chest. Remember me, asshole, the doll grinned. Phil's eyes went wide. He grabbed Chucky's arm, trying to pry it away, but the doll was stronger than any toy should be. The knife plunged once. Then again. Then again. Blood sprayed across the tile. Upstairs, Andy ran. In the hallway. Joanne opened her bedroom door, groggy. She never made it to the stairs. Chucky was waiting. He jumped from the shadows, clinging to her face, driving the knife deep into her neck. Blood bubbled from her mouth as she collapsed, convulsing, trying to scream. Chucky wiped the blade across his sleeve. One down, he hissed. One to go. Andy burst out the back door, barefoot, sobbing. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. Because he knew, Chucky was coming. And next time, he wouldn't just try to kill him. He'd try to become him. The cold pavement bit into Andy's feet as he ran. He didn't feel it. The only thing he felt was fear. His breath came in sharp gasps, fogging the night air as he sprinted down the street, lit only by yellow-orange streetlights that flickered like dying embers. Behind him, the front door of the Simpson house hung open, splattered with dark red stains that were not paint. He didn't dare look back. He knew what was behind him. He knew who was behind him. Andy. Chucky's voice echoed down the street, shrill and unnatural, like a broken speaker warped by rage. The small boy ducked behind a neighbor's hedge, chest heaving, heart thudding so violently it hurt. Somewhere in the back of his mind, the image of Joanne's lifeless body flashed in his head, her eyes wide, mouth frozen in a scream that never came out. Phil, bleeding out on the kitchen floor, eyes still open. All because of him. No. Not because of him. Because of Chucky. The demon in the doll. Andy gripped the kitchen knife in his hand, his knuckles white, trembling. It felt heavy, too heavy. He was just a kid. And he was alone again. Just like before. Only this time, there was nowhere left to go. 1 hour earlier. Before the blood. Before the chase. Before Chucky came home. Andy had tried to tell them again. Tried to tell Phil, tell Joanne. But they dismissed him, just like the cops, just like the doctors, just like everyone since the fire. Andy, Phil said, not unkindly, we talked about this. Chucky isn't real. He was never real. He's real, Andy whispered, trembling. He killed Aunt Maggie. He tried to kill me and my mom. He said he'd come back. Phil knelt in front of him. Son, you've been through a lot. I get that. But dolls don't kill people. Andy didn't respond. What was the point? He had proof once. It burned away with the body. And now, here he was, another foster home, another set of strangers trying to pretend everything was okay. But everything was not okay. That night, he had planned to run. He'd packed a small bag, stashed it under the bed, grabbed the biggest kitchen knife he could find. He didn't know where he would go, only that he had to get away. He never imagined Chucky would beat him to it. Now. A police cruiser pulled up just as Andy stumbled into the middle of the road. He waved his arms, tears streaking down his face, blood smeared across his cheek. The officer slammed the brakes and jumped out. Hey! Whoa! Kid! What happened to you? Andy collapsed into him, sobbing. There's been a murder, he's in my house. He killed my foster parents. He's coming for me. The officer pulled out his radio. I need backup, Simpson residence, 435 Highland. Possible homicide. Child found on scene. A sharp screech tore through the radio. Static. Then a voice. Tell them I said hi, officer. The cop blinked. What the? He turned. And there was Chucky, standing in the middle of the road, holding Phil Simpson's severed hand like a trophy. The officer fumbled for his gun, but Chucky threw the hand at his face, distracting him. In the split second the man reeled, Chucky jumped, slashing his throat open with the box cutter he'd picked up earlier. The officer dropped. Andy screamed. Chucky turned, panting. God, I missed this, he whispered, licking the blood from the blade. You know, Andy, I should thank you. If it wasn't for you, I'd be in hell. But thanks to you, I got another shot. Andy backed away, hands shaking. Chucky's voice turned guttural. Ancient. But time's running out. The longer I stay in this body, the harder it gets. That's why I need you. Only you. You're the first one I ever told. The first one I revealed myself to. You're my way out. No. Andy screamed, turning to run. But Chucky tackled him. Back at the Play Pals Corporation headquarters. The factory buzzed with restless executives and hushed conversations. The death of the technician the night before had been ruled an accident. But no one believed that. Not really. They're saying the prototype doll is missing, said one of the assistants, nervously flipping through reports. Sullivan didn't respond. He stared at a security monitor frozen in static. He'd heard rumors before. Read the police reports. About voodoo. About murder. About a child's doll stabbing people to death. It was insane. It was all insane. And yet. The technician's body was found with 57 stab wounds, half of which were at ankle level. Sullivan turned away from the screen. I want that doll found. I don't care what it costs. If the media gets wind of this, we're finished. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Chucky was already making his way back. Back to where it all began. Back to the factory. In the city sewers. Andy gasped awake. Cold. Wet. Disoriented. He was underground, somewhere in the twisting tunnels below the streets. Chucky had dragged him through a storm drain, tied his hands with plastic twine. The smell of rot and rust filled his lungs. A flickering flashlight illuminated the tunnel wall, casting dancing shadows that looked like demons. Chucky sat across from him, humming the good guy theme under his breath, a butcher's knife in one hand. Know what I realized, Andy, he said casually. I spent too much time trying to kill you before. I should have gone for the soul transfer right away. But I was having too much fun. He stood and approached Andy, eyes gleaming. But I'm on a schedule now. I don't want to be a damn doll forever. So let's do this. Chucky raised the knife, not to stab, but to start the ritual. Andy thrashed, screaming, trying to kick free. Chucky began chanting. The ancient voodoo language slithered off his tongue, filling the tunnel with unnatural energy. Ade du Damballa, give me the power, I beg of you. Lightning cracked somewhere above ground. Andy's body shook. His limbs went numb. The air grew thick. Hear me from the death. But before Chucky could finish, a sudden burst of light filled the tunnel, headlights. A truck had pulled to a stop over a storm grate. Someone was looking down. Help! Andy screamed. Chucky growled. No. He lunged at Andy, knife raised. But Andy kicked out with all his strength, catching Chucky in the chest. The doll stumbled backward, right into the flowing water. I'll be back, Andy. Chucky shrieked as the current pulled him deeper into the tunnel, his voice echoing and fading. The grate was ripped open, and arms reached down to pull Andy up. He was saved. For now. Later that night, at the police station. Andy sat wrapped in a blanket, eyes hollow. Officers came and went, asking questions. He answered none of them. One of the detectives, a man named Ellis, pulled up a chair and sat across from him. You said it was the doll again? Andy didn't respond. Ellis glanced at his notes. We found blood at the foster home. A lot of it. No bodies. Just drag marks. Do you know where they are? Andy looked up slowly. He took them. Who? Chucky. Ellis exhaled. Okay. Andy, where do you think he'll go next? Andy's answer was immediate. Quiet. The factory. Deep beneath the city. Chucky pulled himself from a drainage ditch, soaked and seething. His tiny hands were trembling, not with fear, but with rage. I'm not finished, he whispered, his face twisted in fury. You think you can stop me, Andy? He looked up at the skyline, at the tower bearing the Play Pals logo glowing in the distance. I'm gonna end this. One way or another. And with that, the killer doll disappeared into the shadows. Heading back to where he was born. Where it would all end. The Play Pals Corporation factory loomed like a monolithic tombstone at the edge of the industrial district. Towering smokestacks stood frozen in the night air, puffing out plumes of toxic vapor like breath from a dying beast. Conveyor belts and assembly lines inside creaked and groaned in their mechanical sleep, long hallways lit only by buzzing overhead lights that flickered like warning signs. The factory was meant to mass-produce joy, laughter, and childhood innocence. Tonight, it would become a crucible of death. Andy sat in the back of the patrol car, staring out at the building where the nightmare began. Detective Ellis leaned in from the driver's seat. You're sure about this, Andy? Andy didn't blink. He's there. That's where he was made. That's where he'll go to finish it. Ellis hesitated. Look, I'm not saying I believe in possessed dolls, okay? But we have 2 bodies missing, blood all over your foster home, and a missing doll prototype from the crime scene. And you. You don't lie. Not like this. He opened the door. Let's take a look. Andy stepped out into the cool night, the weight of what was coming crushing his chest. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about ending it. Inside the Play Pals factory. Chucky's footsteps echoed down the massive corridor, his small plastic shoes clicking against metal grates, dragging a fire axe behind him that sparked whenever it scraped the floor. The glow from conveyor belt lights shimmered off his blood-stained overalls. He was humming again. Good guy, good guy. I'm your friend to the end. He turned a corner and entered the central distribution chamber, a massive room lined with thousands of boxed good guy dolls. Shelves rose 30 feet high, rows upon rows of blank smiling faces looking down like soulless witnesses. This is it, Chucky muttered. Home sweet hell. He climbed up onto a platform overlooking the packaging lines. The same line where he had once been built. Once assembled. Once reborn. He looked out across the army of dolls. You're all fake, he growled. I'm the only real one. Chucky reached into his jacket and pulled out a small satchel, black, with bone beads tied around the edge. Inside were the final ingredients for the ritual. Blood. Hair. And the talisman he'd stolen years ago during his voodoo lessons. It shimmered faintly with dark energy. The final transfer had to happen soon. Or he'd be trapped. Meanwhile, Andy and Detective Ellis crept through the employee entrance, flashlight beams cutting through the dusty dark. The air smelled like melted plastic and old oil. Andy led the way, stopping just before the hallway opened into the heart of the factory. I know he's here, Andy whispered. Ellis drew his gun. Stay behind me. If he's just a guy in a costume, I'll take him out. Andy didn't say a word. He knew better. They stepped into the main chamber, and that's when the horror truly began. Suddenly. Movement. Dozens of boxes tumbled from the top shelves above them, crashing to the floor. Good guy dolls spilled out across the concrete like corpses, plastic limbs twisted in unnatural angles. From the shadows, a small voice called out. Andy. The boy froze. Andy, come play with me. The detective swung his light wildly, scanning the walls. Where is he? Where the hell is he? The dolls on the floor began to move. Not Chucky. All of them. Their heads began turning. Slowly. Synchronously. Their mouths opened. Their voice boxes glitched, overlapping in a demonic chorus. Hi, I'm Chucky, wanna play? Hi, I'm Chucky, wanna play? Hi, I'm Chucky. The sound was unbearable. Mechanical. Monstrous. A wall of voices growing louder. Then. Pop. One of the dolls exploded. Then another. And another. Plastic shrapnel flew through the air like confetti at a funeral. Andy and Ellis ducked behind a stack of crates. Jesus! Ellis yelled. What the hell is this? It's him, Andy said. He's doing it. Ellis peeked out, just in time to see Chucky standing atop the assembly platform, holding a fire axe, backlit by the red flashing alarm lights. Hey, pig! Chucky screamed. You wanna play? He threw the axe. It spun through the air like a buzzsaw and embedded itself in Ellis's shoulder. The detective screamed, toppling over, blood pouring down his side. Chucky laughed hysterically. Andy screamed and grabbed Ellis's gun. Hang on. Ellis groaned, fading fast. Finish it, end him, before it's too late. Andy turned. Chucky was gone. The factory descended into chaos. Conveyor belts kicked to life. Blades whirred. Robot arms jerked into motion as the system rebooted from some unseen override. It was like the factory itself was under Chucky's control, no longer a place of production, but a machine of death. Andy ran through the packaging floor, leaping over shredded boxes and broken doll parts. Everywhere he turned, smiling good guy faces stared at him. Rows of lifeless clones, some intact, some torn apart, their eyes flickering. And then. From the shadows, Chucky lunged. He tackled Andy, knocking the gun from his hand. They tumbled down a ramp, crashing into a bin of doll limbs. Chucky clawed at his chest, screaming, I'm gonna be you, Andy. Say goodbye to yourself. Andy shoved him off and scrambled to the gun, but Chucky bit his leg, hard. Blood sprayed. Andy shrieked, kicked him in the face, then grabbed the weapon. Blam. A shot rang out. Chucky's plastic shoulder burst open, spewing red and white fluid like blood and glue. He screamed. You little bastard. Andy fired again. The doll disappeared behind a conveyor belt, leaving a trail of blood and laughter. Andy limped after him. The factory was a maze now. Belts moved erratically. Mechanical arms swung at random. Screams echoed from speakers. A speaker clicked on. Andy. I always said we were friends till the end. Andy reached the control tower above the floor, climbing the rusted ladder with one hand, the gun in the other. From the window, he could see the entire factory floor, hundreds of dolls, dozens of machines. He spotted Chucky. At the heart of the assembly room. Surrounded by candles. The ritual was starting. Andy didn't wait. He leapt from the tower onto the conveyor belt and ran straight into hell. Chucky chanted, louder and louder. Ade do Damballa, give me the power I beg of you. His voice cracked with desperation. His hands were shaking. Andy was coming. The body was deteriorating. He was out of time. He grabbed a syringe of melted plastic, heated in the assembly line's mold vat. He plunged it into his arm, reinforcing the cracks with burning filler. It hurt like hell. But he smiled. Almost done, Andy, he croaked. Almost, me again. Then came the final scream. Andy launched at Chucky and tackled him into the mold press. The boy grabbed the voodoo amulet from the floor and smashed it against the metal rail. Chucky screamed, no longer human, no longer doll, caught between soul and shell. The machines around them began to explode, sparks flying, belts snapping, heat vents erupting into fire. Andy crawled away just as a hydraulic press slammed down, crushing Chucky's legs. The doll howled, dragging himself across the floor, one arm missing. Andy turned. Face to face. The boy raised the gun. Go to hell, he whispered. Blam. Chucky's face exploded, plastic, blood, and bone flying into the air. He lay still. Dead. Again. But the fire had spread. The factory was in flames. The walls were melting. The dolls caught fire, screaming like souls in torment. Andy ran. Down the belt. Through the inferno. Behind him, Chucky's body twitched once more, half his face gone, only one eye blinking. He reached out. Then the gas line blew. Boom. A massive explosion ripped through the factory, sending fireballs into the sky. The roof collapsed. The walls folded. And Chucky's body disappeared into a sea of flame and ash. Outside. Andy stumbled into the street, clothes singed, bleeding, broken, but alive. Sirens blared in the distance. The nightmare was over. He collapsed to his knees. Silent. Alone. Watching the fire burn. Watching the past turn to ash. Beneath the factory ruins. There was no light. Just darkness. Heat pulsed through the scorched steel skeleton of what was once Play Pal's proudest facility. Pipes groaned. Molten plastic bubbled beneath collapsed machinery. The air was thick with smoke, ash, and something else, hate. And in that black pit of death and fire, something moved. A half-melted hand twitched. Blackened, fingers fused together like candle wax, but still alive. A stub of an arm dragged itself forward, clawing across the debris. The face came next. Or what was left of it. One eye socket was empty. The jaw hung loose, the teeth cracked and scorched. Most of the synthetic skin had peeled away, revealing a twisted skull of melted plastic and broken mechanics. And yet, he smiled. Chucky was still alive. Barely. But it was enough. His voice crackled, demonic and distorted. You little shit, you think this is over? Then came the laughter, low, guttural, hateful. Because death wasn't the end. Not for him. Meanwhile, hours later. Andy sat in the back of a child services van wrapped in a blanket, staring blankly at the floor. Paramedics had patched his wounds. Police had tried to ask questions. Reporters snapped photos as he was led from the burning factory. But Andy didn't say a word. He was done talking. Every time he told the truth, someone ended up dead. Now he was being transported to another temporary holding shelter, awaiting reassignment. Another foster home. Another strange bed. Another stranger pretending to care. The social worker driving the van tried to smile at him in the rearview mirror. You're a brave kid, Andy. I read the reports. You saved a lot of people tonight. That fire would have taken out the whole district if the explosion hadn't triggered the sprinkler line. You're a hero. Andy didn't reply. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like something inside him had died in that factory. Burned up with the past. But in his mind, one question echoed louder than the rest. Was he really dead this time? Back in the wreckage. It took hours before the city sent in cleanup crews. Hazmat teams roamed the remains, spraying down molten vats and shifting twisted beams of metal. One worker found something strange. Hey, I got movement over here. They rushed toward the collapsed hallway beneath the conveyor system, where a pile of melted dolls had formed a grotesque mass of twisted smiles and empty eyes. But when they looked closer, there was blood. Not paint. Not ink. Real blood. Fresh. As if something, or someone, had crawled through here after the explosion. That night, at the shelter. The room was small. Sterile. One bed. A wooden dresser. A barred window. It smelled like bleach and sadness. Andy sat on the mattress, knees tucked to his chest. He hadn't changed out of the clothes they gave him, oversized, itchy, donated. His bag was placed by the door, untouched. He didn't sleep. He couldn't. Because every time he closed his eyes, he heard that voice. "Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?" And he saw the face, twisted, burned, blackened, but smiling. It would never leave him. A loud clatter outside made him jump. He crossed the room slowly, barefoot, and peeked through the barred window. Nothing. Just whined through the alley. He turned away. And froze. Sitting in the middle of his floor, was a good guy doll. Pristine. Untouched. Smiling. Andy's blood turned to ice. "No," he whispered. "Not again." He backed into the corner, hands shaking violently. The doll didn't move. It just sat there. Watching. He didn't take his eyes off it the entire night. The next morning, the shelter supervisor knocked softly and entered the room. "Andy. You ready for?" She stopped mid-sentence when she saw the broken pieces of the doll scattered across the floor. Head cracked open. Arms ripped off. Stuffing everywhere. Andy stood over it, breathing hard, his hands scraped and bloody. She blinked in disbelief. "Where did you get that doll?" "It was here when I woke up," Andy muttered, eyes wide. The supervisor frowned. "That's impossible. We don't allow toys like that anymore. Not after what happened. Someone's idea of a sick joke maybe, but no one signed that in." Andy didn't respond. Because he already knew the truth. It wasn't a joke. Chucky was trying again. That afternoon, across town. 2 sanitation workers unloaded garbage from the industrial district, tossing blackened remains into a trash incinerator. One of them nudged a melted pile of plastic with his boot. "Damn, these dolls are creepy even when they're half melted." He kicked one toward the edge of the chute. Its head lolled sideways. Its eyes opened. Slice. The worker collapsed, blood spraying from his neck. The second one turned, too late. Chucky, still half-burned, wrapped in melted clothes and missing fingers, lunged from the flames, gripping a rusted screwdriver. He stabbed again. And again. And again. By the time it was over, both men were bleeding out across the floor, and Chucky was gone, having crawled into the back of a departing truck filled with new factory parts. Later that night, at the shelter, Andy was asleep. Dreamless. Or so he thought. In his dream, he was back in the factory. But it wasn't burning anymore. It was alive. The machines moved like organs. The walls pulsed. The dolls whispered his name over and over. "Andy. Andy. Andy." Then a hand shot up from a conveyor belt, grabbed his leg. He looked down. It was Chucky, his body stitched together with doll parts and wires, his face cracked and leaking blood. "Time to finish what we started." Andy woke screaming. The supervisor ran in. "Andy. Are you all right?" He was soaked in sweat. Trembling. Barely able to breathe. "He's coming," Andy whispered. "He's still coming." Outside the shelter. A van rolled slowly into the alley, its lights off. The back door opened. Chucky emerged, bandaged in duct tape, arms stapled together, one eye missing. He dragged a toolbox behind him. "Playtime's not over yet, Andy," he muttered, stepping toward the rear fire escape. Inside the box were all his toys, wires, knives, nails, scalpels. Enough for a party. And when he looked up at the window where Andy slept, he grinned wide. "Welcome to hell, kid." 2:14 a.m. The shelter was silent. Too silent. The building sat crouched in a forgotten part of the city, like a sickly relic no one wanted to claim. Inside, children slept in rows of rooms with thin walls and rusted vents. Hallways were dark, lit only by a faint green exit sign that flickered like a dying firefly. But one shadow wasn't like the others. It moved. Slow. Small. Deliberate. Chucky crept through the corridor, dragging his toolbox behind him like a trick-or-treat bucket from hell. His plastic foot clicked softly with every step. One arm was wrapped in barbed wire. His jaw was still half melted, exposing rows of chipped dull teeth and a warped metal hinge. His eye, his only eye, gleamed in the dark. He stopped outside Andy's room. He placed a small item on the floor, a wind-up good guy toy with a cracked smile. He twisted the key. Tick. 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 The toy began to walk in a jerky motion, clicking with every step. From inside, Andy stirred. Andy's dream. He was running down the factory assembly line again, but this time, the machines were alive. They screamed at him in Chucky's voice. The dolls reached for him with blood-soaked hands. Conveyor belts pumped blood instead of plastic. He was trapped. Then. He turned. And Chucky was standing there. Not burnt. Not broken. But human again. Charles Lee Ray. Smiling. Holding a noose. Say goodbye to yourself, Andy. Andy woke with a scream. He bolted upright, heart racing, soaked in cold sweat. Then, he heard it. Tick. 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 The sound was coming from the hallway. Andy grabbed the chair by his bed and crept toward the door. He opened it slowly. The hallway was empty, at first. Then he saw the wind-up toy click-clacking toward him, its head jerking side to side. Written in marker across its chest. Hi Andy. Andy's blood turned cold. He stepped back, shut the door, and locked it. He turned around. And there he was. Chucky. Standing on the desk. Grinning. Boo. Andy screamed. Chucky lunged. The struggle was instant and brutal. Chucky slammed into Andy's chest, knocking him backward. The boy hit the floor hard. Chucky leapt, a scalpel in his hand, stabbing down. Andy rolled just in time. The blade hit the floor beside his face. Chucky snarled. You just don't know when to die, do ya? Andy kicked him into the dresser, the doll smashing into a lamp that shattered on impact. Sparks flew. Chucky rose again, unstoppable. Andy scrambled for the bed, grabbing the pillow, wrapping it around his arm as Chucky lunged again, this time slicing deep into the fabric instead of flesh. Andy punched him, hard. Chucky flew back and slammed into the door. Ow. Damn, kid. You're stronger than you look. He stood again, limping, laughing. But not stronger than me. He pulled something from his belt. A small voodoo dagger, black and bone-carved, glowing faintly. Andy's heart dropped. Chucky began chanting. The same awful words. The same dark voice. Ade du Damballa, give me the power, I beg of you. Andy lunged, but Chucky kicked him in the face. Stay down, soul boy. He continued. The room darkened. The air thickened. Andy could feel it, his body growing cold, weak, as if something were pulling him out of himself. No, he croaked. Hear me from the death. Chucky's hand trembled as he raised the blade. Andy grabbed the broken lamp cord. Let me be you. Andy shoved the live wires into Chucky's leg. Zap. Electricity surged through the doll, sparks erupting from his eye, his mouth gaping in silent scream. His hair ignited, his hand spasmed, dropping the dagger. Andy kicked him across the room. Chucky smashed into the wall, smoking, twitching. Andy picked up the dagger. He stood over the fallen killer. You're never gonna be me. He stabbed Chucky through the stomach. The doll howled, a screech that was half human, half machine. Black blood oozed from the wound. Chucky's face contorted with rage, pain, and something else. Desperation. "I'll kill you," he shrieked. "I'll kill you all." Andy turned toward the door. But it exploded inward. Chucky had yanked a fire extinguisher from the wall and smashed it through the wood. Andy flew back. Now the doll stood, limping, bleeding, hissing through cracked teeth. Time for the finale, Andy. Meanwhile, down the hall. The shelter supervisor had been woken by the alarm lights. She rushed toward Andy's room. She saw the smashed door. The blood. The sparking wires. Then, Chucky stepped out. She gasped. "What the hell?" Chucky jumped, burying the dagger in her throat. Her scream was cut off. She crumpled. Chucky yanked it free. Adults ruin everything. Andy was already running. Down the stairs. Through the kitchen. He needed to escape. He needed fire. He threw open the furnace door, an old industrial boiler used to heat the building. The flames inside crackled. He grabbed a can of lighter fluid from the cleaning closet. Footsteps behind him. Then laughter. "Cornered yourself, huh?" Chucky limped into view, dragging the dagger behind him. "Let's make this quick." Andy sprayed lighter fluid all over the floor. Then onto Chucky. The doll stopped, sniffed. "You wouldn't." Andy struck a match. "You're right." He dropped it. Whoosh. Chucky screamed as the fire engulfed him, his body convulsing as the flames tore through him. His skin bubbled. His eyes popped. Plastic exploded off in sheets. Andy backed away, shielding his face. Chucky's screams echoed through the shelter like a demon being dragged into hell. "You little Bayard." Then silence. Nothing but fire. And the smell of melting flesh and rage. 5 minutes later. Fire trucks arrived. Police followed. They found Andy outside on the steps, soot-covered, burned, but alive. They found the remains of the doll inside, charred to the bone, no longer smiling. The nightmare, it seemed, was finally over. But Andy knew better. Chucky never really died. Not for long. Far away. At the Play Pals storage facility, a night guard patrolled the back aisles of unsold merchandise. He paused beside a stack of sealed crates. He swore he heard something. A heartbeat. He leaned closer to the nearest box. Suddenly, 2 red plastic eyes lit up inside. And a voice whispered. "Hi, I'm Chucky, and I'll be back." Play Pals Toy Factory, 2 weeks later. 3 a.m., storm over Chicago. Rain hammered the city like 1,000 tiny nails. Lightning cracked the sky in jagged veins, and thunder growled like a monster awakening beneath the earth. At the outskirts, shrouded in shadows and silence, loomed the Play Pals Toy Factory, sealed after the last fire. Dozens of good guy dolls were supposed to have been destroyed, but not all of them were. Deep inside, past broken conveyor belts and blackened assembly arms, a single crate rattled. Bang! 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 Inside, something was moving. Something alive. Then, cracks appeared in the wood. A tiny bloody hand burst through. And from the darkness within, a voice snarled. "I'm back, and better than ever." Elsewhere. St. Agatha's Juvenile Psychiatric Center. Andy sat on the edge of a cot in a white room. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. His face was pale, eyes sunken with trauma. He hadn't slept in days. The doctors thought he was safe here. They were wrong. He could feel it. Chucky wasn't dead. He never really died. The scars on Andy's arms, left by teeth and blades, burned like warnings. Something was coming. Andy, a voice whispered behind him. He turned. No one was there. Then. A flash of red hair in the corner mirror. A grin. A shadow. Gone. Andy screamed. Back at the factory. The creature that emerged from the crate wasn't just Chucky anymore. Not entirely. The plastic was blackened. Melted. Fused with burnt wires. Pieces of other dolls had been used to repair him, limbs from defective good guys, stitched with rusty staples and cords. His mouth was broken at one corner, twisted in a permanent sneer. One eye was gone, replaced by a red LED sensor that blinked like a heartbeat. And worse? He had learned something. In the fire, in the void between life and death, Charles Lee Ray had made a pact with something darker than voodoo. Something ancient. Something that hungered. Chucky wasn't just back. He was possessed by something far worse. He dragged a jagged axe behind him, rusted from decades of blood and oil. Time to finish the damn job. St. Agatha's, power failure. The lights in the facility flickered. Then went out. Nurses murmured in confusion. The generator failed. Then the emergency lights turned red. Security cameras shut down. And Chucky walked in. Drenched in rain. Bloody footprints. The axe slung across his back. He killed the guard at the entrance with a hammer claw to the eye. The next, he garroted with plastic toy string. He walked slowly, methodically, dragging behind him a plastic sack filled with makeshift tools, screws, scissors, box cutters, melted doll limbs sharpened into spikes. He moved floor by floor, leaving behind a trail of blood and terror. Room 33, Andy's room. Andy stood frozen as the hallway alarms blared. Then he heard it. A child's voice. Singing. Faint. Echoing. Musical note: "Hi, I'm Chucky, wanna play? I've got a knife. And you're my prey." Musical note. Andy backed toward the door. It was locked. He pounded on it. "Let me out." Silence. Then. Scrape. A metal hook dragged along the floor outside. "Miss me, buddy?" Chucky hissed. Andy shoved his bed against the door just as an axe split through the wood inches from his face. Then another. Andy screamed. The door shattered. Chucky's face emerged through the hole, half flesh, half wires, grinning. "I'm Bayak." The chase. Andy ran. Down the emergency stairwell. Past screaming nurses. Past dead bodies. Chucky pursued like a demonic gremlin, laughing and slashing anyone in his way. He killed a doctor by jamming scissors into his mouth until they snapped through the back of his skull. He climbed the walls like a rat, leaping from railings, dragging Andy into shadows. Andy managed to grab a fire extinguisher and blast Chucky with it, knocking him off the stairs. Chucky crashed to the floor 2 stories down, but got up laughing. "Come on, Andy. Let's finish what we started." The basement, boiler room. Andy made it to the old boiler room, the same kind of place he'd fought Chucky before. He found a metal pipe and stood his ground. Moments later, Chucky appeared in the steam, bloody, laughing. "This place feel familiar, huh?" He rushed Andy with the axe, Andy blocked with the pipe, sparks flying. They fought. Violent. Brutal. Andy slammed Chucky against a furnace. Chucky bit into Andy's neck, tearing skin. Andy swung the pipe down, crunching Chucky's arm clean off. Black fluid sprayed the wall. Chucky roared. But he still kept coming. He grabbed Andy by the throat. "I'm never gonna die, you hear me?" Andy gasped, then reached for the boiler pressure valve. "Then burn with me." He yanked it. The explosion. Boom. Fire erupted. Chucky screamed, engulfed in steam and fire and screaming metal. Andy was blown backward. Flames tore through the hallway. Alarms screamed. Chucky, still burning, lunged through the fire, half his face melted off, howling. "I'll haunt you forever." Andy grabbed the emergency axe from the wall and swung. He cleaved Chucky's head in half. The doll collapsed, twitching. Black blood pooled on the floor. Andy stumbled back, burned and sobbing. It was finally over. Or so he thought. Hours later, the cleanup crew sorted through the debris. They bagged Chucky's parts, melted torso, cracked head, broken limbs. Placed them in a biohazard container. They didn't notice the strange red symbol burned into Chucky's chest. Or the faint, whispering voice that echoed from within the sealed box. Ade, do. Damballa. Final scene, factory warehouse, 1 month later. A new line of good guy dolls was being tested. The company rebranded, now called Playtech. Executives insisted the past was just urban legend. One of the new dolls sat on a shelf. Smiling. Its plastic hand twitched. And its eyes slowly turned red. Then. Fade to black. He's still out there. 1 year later. Location, hidden toy testing site, outside Chicago. The world had moved on. Play Pals was gone. Bankrupt. Buried under lawsuits and scandals. But a new company, Playtech Industries, emerged from its ashes, buying up old assets, patent rights, and the doll molds. They swore to reinvent childhood fun. But buried beneath innovation was the same cursed plastic. The same demon. Chucky. Testing facility, Sector D, off-limits storage. Late one night, a young tech assistant named Ryan stayed after hours. His job was to catalog the old inventory. Discard the unsafe ones. He unlocked a heavy steel door leading to the forgotten testing room. Dust floated in thick air. Rows of damaged dolls sat in silence, some missing eyes, others with melted faces. Deformed. Lifeless. Except one. A red-eyed good guy doll sat strapped to a testing chair. Its head tilted. Its lips slightly open, whispering, so faint it sounded like static. Ryan squinted and leaned in. "I'm still in here." Suddenly, the doll's head snapped toward him. Boo! Ryan screamed, but it was too late. The lights went out. In the blackness, he heard fast scuttling, like claws on concrete. Then. Splat. Blood sprayed the wall. His throat was ripped out by plastic teeth. Chucky, now more beast than doll, dragged the body across the floor, laughing. His form had changed, flesh fused with plastic, his limbs made from the pieces of hundreds of discarded toys. He wasn't just a doll anymore. He was a construct of rage. A demon bound in childlike form. His voice gurgled now, distorted by melted circuits. "I warned you. I'll never die." Meanwhile, Andy's apartment, Chicago. Andy was now 17. But he never escaped. Therapy hadn't helped. Meds hadn't dulled the nightmares. He lived in a crumbling apartment filled with locks, holy books, and weapons. He was waiting. Every time a doll commercial played, his hand twitched toward the shotgun. He saw Chucky in every alley shadow. Then one night, his TV screen flickered, static burst into an old Play Pals commercial. But something was off. The kid on screen screamed. And Chucky turned to the camera, blood dripping from his mouth. "I found you, Andy." Then the screen cracked from the inside. That night, Andy's apartment. It started with the whispering. From inside the walls. Then the lights exploded. He heard his front door creak. Andy grabbed the shotgun and stood in the hall, heart racing. The apartment was silent. Until... thump. A bloody toy hammer dropped at his feet. Then... a hand burst from the wall panel and yanked him through. Andy hit the floor hard, dragged into the walls of his own apartment, screaming. Chucky crawled like a spider beside him, half wires, half doll, face stitched shut but leaking black ooze from his eyes. You can't hide forever, Andy. The ritual room. Andy woke up bound inside a forgotten Playtech subfactory beneath the city. Candles surrounded him. Symbols painted in blood. Chucky stood on a toy throne made of bones and doll parts, wearing a child-sized ceremonial robe. In his hand, a knife carved from a crucifix. What the hell is this? Andy screamed. Chucky laughed. I've been busy. Found myself some dark help. Old gods. Forgotten spells. I'm not just Charles Lee Ray anymore. He gestured around. You're looking at the new god of childhood nightmares. He lifted the knife. And you, my old friend, are the final ingredient. The possession. Chucky began chanting, his voice no longer his own. Multiple voices echoed through him, children crying, mothers screaming, priests begging. The candles flared. The room shook. Andy felt something crawl across his skin, into his eyes, his mouth, darkness itself. Then Chucky screamed, as the spirits tried to enter him. But something went wrong. The souls rejected him. They twisted his body, melting it, mutating it. Chucky howled in rage as his body imploded, then reformed, twice as tall, bloated with gore and plastic. His mouth was now a wide, tooth-filled void. His arms had doll heads growing from them, all screaming. The ritual had failed. But something else had awakened. The abomination. Chucky, now a flesh-plastic abomination, shambled toward Andy, leaking molten rubber. The walls melted around them. The floor cracked, and hands reached up from the earth, grabbing at Andy's legs, spirits of the dead children Chucky had murdered. Andy broke free from the ropes using a jagged nail. He grabbed a gasoline can from the corner. You want a sacrifice? He poured it on Chucky's throne. Lit a match. The entire chamber erupted into flames. Chucky lunged. Boom. The chamber exploded, launching Andy through the ceiling and into the upper floor. Final fight. Andy crawled, broken and bleeding, through the burning remains of the facility. But Chucky wasn't done. The abomination emerged from the fire, now on all fours, screeching like a dying child. Its face was 10 faces, all screaming in unison. Its body cracked with the weight of souls. Andy found a crucifix-shaped spike on the wall, a prototype toy weapon. He gripped it and turned. No more games. He stabbed Chucky through the heart, right through the original good guy chest plate hidden beneath all the mutations. Chucky's scream was like 100 children being torn in half. The ground collapsed beneath them. Darkness. Andy awoke in rubble. Smoke. Silence. The demon was gone. For now. Rescue teams pulled him out. He was hospitalized for months. Declared insane. No one believed him. But something inside him had changed. Chucky didn't die. Andy now saw his red eyes in mirrors. He heard his laugh in phone static. Chucky had left something behind. A seed. Final scene, toy store, Christmas Eve. A mother browsed shelves with her daughter. They passed a new line of interactive AI dolls, rebranded from the old good guys. One sat facing the aisle, alone. Its eyes blinked red when no one was looking. Its lips twitched. Then whispered. Andy. I'll always be your friend, to the end. The end?